Okay, speed 1, I'm not pushing, it's just the weight of the belt sander. Speed 3. Speed 5. So I really think that the lower speeds would only be used for like fine finishing work if you want to do some very fine grit paper on this. Or like if you have a very thin material but you want to still use the big belt sander, the lower speeds would definitely be useful. But for something like this, top speed is really the only speed to use. And also, I've been sanding for at least 20 minutes, almost half an hour now, and there is a little bit of dust in here, but compared to the amount of dust that would be swirling around in here if I'd been doing the same amount of sanding with like a palm sander or something, there was hardly anything in here. So by far this is the best dust collection system that I've ever seen on a sander. Hello and welcome back to my workshop. So today's review is on the Makita 9404 belt sander. So I've had this for over 2 years now. I don't use it all the time, but it has had a decent amount of use. The belt sander is really handy for doing big sanding jobs. It's a lot faster than a palm sander and it has a lot more power than a palm sander. Now obviously it's not going to touch a piece of wood that has like 3 millimeters of lead paint on it and just whisk it off. It still has limits to how much it's going to sand, so it's still a sander, it's not a planer, but it is sure handy for doing the bigger sanding jobs. So anyway, this is a 100 by 610 mil belt sander. It has an 1010 watt motor, has variable speeds, which I've never actually used the variable speed, but it's there if you want it. I figure that maybe if you're sanding like Bondo or something, you want a lower speed. But anyway, the belt speed is 210 to 440 meters per minute. And this tool is a pretty heavy tool. And I'd say that this tool is a solid built tool. Some tools, like you have them and you're using them and they just don't really feel that solid. This feels solid. So, got a 4 meter long cord, which it's nice that they actually bothered to put a proper cord on this sander, because so many corded power tools come with like a wimpy little 1.5 meter cord or something like that. This is a thick cord, it's 4 meters long, and it is the good quality cord. It's nice and bendy. It's not the hard plastic type that, like, if you kink it up like that, it holds that shape. This one will unwind and it won't get caught on stuff. So that is nice that they put a good cord on it. It has 2 fans inside, one that cools the motor and one that actually sucks the dust. So the dust collection on this tool, I would say, is the best dust collection I've ever seen on a sander. As in, dust actually goes in the bag and stays in the bag. Most sanders, like especially the palm sanders, that like any time that a palm sander comes with a plastic case that has like cyclone on it, or like they're boasting about how well it's going to suck the dust up, those never work. The best dust collectors are the ones that just have a cloth bag, and in this case, this actually has a separate fan rotor in there that sucks the dust up and spews it into the bag. It works. Most of the dust, especially the bigger particles, go in the bag unless you get it clogged up. The bag is a pretty good quality. You just have this little piece of plastic on the bottom that holds it shut, and these bags are really easy to find if you break it. I don't know why, but it must be a pretty normal part to wear out on this, because normally when you see spare parts for this, and a lot of sellers that sell this actually sell spare parts for it. They'll sell the bags, they'll sell the base plates, and they'll sell brushes. Those are the normal parts. So like I said, it's a pretty heavy tool. I like heavy tools. To me, it kind of means that there's more metal in there and that it's going to last longer. So you have a quick release for the belt, and then you can just slide your belt off. Belt sander belts, by the way, do have a direction that you have to put them. They have arrows pointing, and there's a little arrow on the back here. You got to make sure those line up. The only thing that I'm kind of disappointed about this sander is the base plate is this graphite plate. Now, the only reason I say I'm disappointed is because I don't know how long this is going to last, and at least here, this is hard to find, this plate. Like, you actually have to go to a spare parts seller. Whereas for Makita's other models, the 9403, which is a little bit bigger, you can buy those base plates everywhere. But what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to go to the spare parts supplier and buy a bunch of these and keep them on hand. And I will keep track how many belts I go through before I have to change this base plate. And I'll put it in the description or comments once I change this. It might be a while, it might be very soon, I don't know. But when I need to change this, I will put a comment down below. So that is backed by this cork plate. And this is aluminum, and it has this diamond pattern on it. Now, I do like that they put this graphite plate with the cork and then this plate, because cheaper belt sanders, they'll just have a piece of like a flat piece of aluminum or steel underneath, and your belt rubs against that, which I think is probably going to make way too much friction. Whereas with this graphite, like the belt, like if you feel inside the belt here, it is nice and slippery, and this is nice and smooth. So I do like that they included that in the design. So then it's really easy to take belts on and off. You just pop them on and off, which is nice because I do have my stationary belt sander. You basically have to disassemble the whole thing to change the belts, but that's another story. So then this is just your free wheel, and then this is the drive wheel. If you wanted to change the belts, the drive belt, that's in here. It's just a screw, and you can buy a new drive belt. To adjust the belt, you have this little knob here. My recommendation is once you get your belt running true, do not touch this, because every time once you touch it, the belt's always going to walk one way or the other on you. So now I know that's not really possible. You're always going to have to touch this. Usually when I'm using it, I will find that sweet spot, but then like I'll change to like a thin piece of wood or something, and I will have to adjust the belt. But it's a really easy to use knob. It's right there. It's easy to keep your belt going straight. And the dust port on here, it is round, and you can put a vacuum on it, which that is something that so many sanders don't come with a round dust port, which is annoying. This one you can actually put a vacuum on. So like if I'm sanding lead paint, I'll put the vacuum on it instead of sending it into the bag. It works great. So as far as ergonomics, it's all just the glass fiber reinforced nylon. There's no rubber overmolding, which I just love the fact that there's no rubber overmolding, because the rubber overmolding is always the first part to wear, and it kind of looks bad. And I really don't see the point of the rubber overmolding. So it's an on-off trigger. You don't have any variable speed with the trigger, but you do have a lock for the trigger, so you can lock the trigger on, unlock it. That's really handy. It's pretty nice to hold on. You got this big handle at the front, and you got the handle at the back. So holding it like this is pretty stable. It's not too tiring to use it. It's got good ergonomics. So mine came with the Makita Mac Pack, And I changed out the plastic insert for a foam one because the plastic that Makita uses for their MacPack inserts is just way too thin. And this big heavy tool had smashed it up in transport. And I didn't bother sending it back because I don't care about a cheap piece of plastic insert. I just replaced it for foam. So, yeah, doesn't matter. So this is a pretty strong belt sander. I mean, it's not the strongest tool out there. Like, when you start to push on it, you can hear it start to work. But on the other hand, like, it steps up and it does its work. It doesn't kind of just stall and smoke and like some tools might. I've only ever used 100 grit paper because that seems to do most of what I want. But it does that just fine. I'm really happy with the build quality on this. I mean, this is aluminum, the base plate is aluminum, basically the whole frame of the belt sander is aluminum. We got this big plastic, it is ABS plastic, but it feels pretty solid handle at the front. And this is all the glass fiber reinforced nylon, all of this, and it is pretty tough, and there's no over molding on the handle, which I really like that. And we've got nice big screws holding it together. So the build quality is pretty good. Now this is a bit of an expensive tool. I think I paid like 280 euros for this or something. But I would definitely say it is worth every penny over the cheap belt sanders. And I'd actually say if you don't want to pay the money to buy a Makita belt sander, buy a used Makita belt sander. Like, don't bother with the cheap Ryobis or the no names or any of the other specials that will be like at department stores or anything like that. Get on the internet, like Marketplace or whatever, and you'll be able to find used ones. Because it pretty much seems that Makita is the belt sander company. I mean, like DeWalt, Bosch, Hikoki, all of those companies, they do have one or two models. But at least when I was looking at belt sanders, you can't find those, and even if you do find them for sale, they're usually quite a lot more than the Makitas. So I would definitely say go with the Makitas, and Makita has a full line of belt sanders. Like, they have a 75mm version of this, they have a bigger model that has the same belt and a 75mm version of that, I think. They have smaller models, they have the little power files and stuff like that. Makita has a lot of belt sanders, and because there are so many Makita belt sanders out there, parts are probably always going to be available. Or at least as long as you need them to be available, because obviously with a belt sander you do have consumables like the base plate and the brushes and that kind of stuff. And there's also a little wheel just back in here. I don't know if you can see it. No. But there's a little wheel that, oh, maybe you can see it here better. Yeah, there's a little wheel. See that little black one back in there? I think that might also be a wear point. But because there's so many Makitas out there, parts are easy to get for them. And like I said, base plates and brushes, bags, you can usually get those from most suppliers that are supplying the belt sanders. And I'd also definitely say go with the 100 by 610 mil belt, because it's just handier to have the big belt rather than the smaller ones. It gives a much nicer finish. The small belt sanders, at least the one I used, seem to have a little bit of a tendency to gouge into the wood, whereas this one's very stable. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.